There comes a time in every man's life when everything seems to slow down. The applause fades, the chase for validation feels empty, and success begins to lose its taste. It's as if a void opens up, and in that silence, something deep within stirs. A sadness with no clear face, a longing that defies all logic and reason. In that moment, a man faces the ghost of his first love, not a woman, but the mother figure buried in his unconscious. Carl Jung warned us about this moment. He called it the mother complex, an invisible inheritance, a psychological framework so deeply ingrained that until we bring it to light, our entire lives become reactions to a wound we didn't even know we had. This isn't about blaming your mother. It's about realizing that the most confining prisons aren't built of iron bars, but from the internalized expectations, old archetypes, and the unspoken belief that love must be earned by becoming what she never asked for, but what you thought she wanted. From the very first breath you took, she was your entire world. Her smile was your approval, her silence your punishment. She was your first mirror, and whatever you saw in her eyes, you took as the truth of your worth. But Jung teaches us something profound. The archetype of the mother is not simply the woman who gave birth to you. It's an ancient symbol rooted deeply in the collective unconscious. It represents origin, nourishment, protection. But it also speaks of engulfment, regression, and psychological dependency if it's not integrated properly. That's where the fracture happens. When your real mother can't measure up to the impossible ideals set by this archetype, the child doesn't mourn. Instead, he adapts. He creates a version of himself designed to win her approval, to earn her love, to survive. This version of himself becomes the mask he wears, and eventually that mask becomes the man. But deep inside, that boy never goes away. He still aches, performing, compensating, and chasing women. Not for intimacy, but for repair. Not for connection, but to resurrect the mother who lives inside the wound. Jung said, what is not made conscious will be lived as fate. So the pattern repeats itself. You fall in love with women who reflect the same coldness, distance, and silence your mother once carried. You self-sabotage just when success is within reach, collapsing at the slightest feminine disapproval. Not because you're weak, but because a part of you still believes that her gaze holds the key to whether you're worthy of existing. Now here's the part most men never confront. You can't become whole until you shatter the illusion. You can't individuate, you can't truly become your own man until you break free from the psychic orbit of your mother. Jung didn't mean kill in the literal sense, he meant differentiate. Seeing her not as a goddess or a villain, but as a human being. Limited, wounded, you're not loving her. You're worshiping an idea, battling a myth. Both are illusions, and both will keep you broken. So, ask yourself, are you truly choosing your life? Or are you still trying to prove your worth to a mother who's long stopped watching? This isn't just self-help, this is soul surgery. Because every time you react with irrational guilt, every time rejection paralyzes you, every time you overfunction in relationships, you're not acting as a man, you're echoing the child inside who still believes that if he's good enough, he'll finally be chosen. But healing doesn't come from being chosen. It comes from choosing yourself. It's letting go of the sacred expectation that the mother who gave you life can also give you your identity. She can't. That's your task now. A man who hasn't reconciled with his inner mother doesn't date. He reenacts. He doesn't lead. He compensates. He doesn't love. He pleads for redemption in disguise. What haunts him isn't a person. It's a projection. Carl Jung taught that the unconscious projects its unresolved contents onto the external world when they're not integrated within. And what's more powerful, more magnetic to the unexamined man than the image of the feminine? So he seeks her, not as a partner, but as a mirror, a surrogate mother who can finally complete the story that's been left unfinished. He calls it chemistry, but it's really just repetition. He says, she completes me, but it's just regression. The boy reaching for the emotional security he was once denied. Jung called this projection. When a man's inner feminine, largely shaped by the first woman in his life, gets cast onto every woman he meets, he doesn't see them. He sees her, the mother, the hope, the hunger, and it breaks him. Because no woman can bear the weight of an unconscious child. She becomes overwhelmed by the burden of expectations he can't even put into words. Expectations that she save him, soothe him, forgive him, complete him, but without him ever having to ask. The boy doesn't ask, he just waits. And when she can't give him what even his own mother couldn't, he feels abandoned. Again, not by her, but by the wound she unintentionally opened. This is the cycle Jung warned us about. The fate of a man who hasn't withdrawn his projections. He turns every relationship into a ritual sacrifice, bleeding out his soul in search of something that cannot be retrieved. The perfect mother that never was. So the question becomes, how long will you let the past dictate your gaze? How long will you confuse love with salvation? Because as long as the mother archetype inside you remains idealized or demonized, you're not seeing clearly. You're not seeing her, nor yourself. And until that changes, you will confuse intimacy with need, sex with healing, silence with rejection, and abandonment wrapped in fire. The feminine must be reclaimed, not repeated. And to do that, the man must descend into his own unconscious. He must confront the pain he buried, not to punish his mother, but to retrieve his soul. This descent is what Jung called individuation, not the pursuit of perfection, but the integration of shadow. It's the transformation of unconscious patterns into conscious choices. So what does that mean for you, brother? It means that until you face the wound, you will keep asking the world to mother you. And the world will not. The world will break you until you become your own protector, until you father yourself, until you withdraw the ancient loyalty to a pain that never served you. That process, it's not poetic, it's disorienting. Because the moment you stop seeking your mother in women, you will feel alone. Not because you are, but because for the first time, you're standing in the silence she once filled. And it's in that silence that the real man begins to take shape. You think you're stuck because you're lazy? You think you haven't succeeded because you lack discipline? What if the truth is darker? What if you're not failing because of those things, but because you're being loyal? Carl Jung observed that the unconscious is not governed by logic, but by myth. And one of the oldest myths it clings to is this: if I grow beyond the suffering of those who raise me, I betray them. This is the unspoken pact. The boy doesn't write it down, but he lives by it. And it sounds like this: if my mother struggled, who am I to thrive? If she lived unloved, how dare I feel chosen? If she carried pain her whole life, what right do I have to feel free? This isn't reasoning, it's not conscious, it's emotional gravity pulling you back to the psychic atmosphere of your childhood. The room you outgrew physically, but never left psychologically. So what happens? You dim your light just before success. You ruin good relationships before they become safe. You seek rejection just to feel familiar, not because you want to, but because some deep part of you whispers, if I heal, I leave her behind. Jung called this kind of loyalty a binding archetypal possession. When the archetype isn't just influencing you, but inhabiting you. When your mother's pain becomes your identity. When you carry her sadness like a relic, afraid to let it go. Because if you do, who are you without it? You become her echo, her shadow, her second chance. Not consciously, not maliciously, but faithfully. As a son trying to make right what was never his to fix. And here's the paradox that breaks most men. You cannot honor your mother by suffering alongside her. You can only honor her by evolving beyond her. This is not betrayal, this is liberation. Because the purpose of a son is not to remain in orbit around the mother's grief. It is to step out of it, to carry forward what was unlived, to become the branch that is real maturity. That is the birth of the adult self, not as a reaction to pain, but as a conscious act of differentiation. So if you find yourself sabotaging your own success, if you keep choosing smallness, if you shrink around joy, peace, or power, ask yourself the question most men never dare to face. Who am I betraying by being happy? And when the answer comes, and it will come in a whisper, you'll know exactly where the wound still lives. But here's your truth, and you need to tattoo it into your soul. Her pain is not your destiny. She gave you life, yes, but what you do with that life, that is your offering back to her. You are not here to repeat her story. You are here to complete it, not by carrying her suffering, but by transcending it, so that one day, When you look into your own reflection, you no longer see her sadness. You see your own sovereignty. There's a kind of loneliness that no one talks about. The loneliness that lives inside a man who has abandoned himself. He wakes up, performs, smiles when expected, but if you were to look beneath the surface, you'd find a child curled in the corner of his psyche. Unseen, unheard, and still waiting for the warmth that never came. Jung said that what remains unconscious doesn't disappear. It lives on as fate, and the greatest fate of the unhealed man is this. He becomes the very presence he once needed, but never received. Not toward others, but toward himself. He tells himself to toughen up when he needs compassion. He pushes through exhaustion when he needs to rest. He mocks his own pain, laughs off his sadness, and punishes himself for emotions he would soothe in anyone else. He becomes his own authoritarian figure, his own absent nurturer, his own silent judge. This is the final frontier of the mother complex, emotional self-abandonment. It's not just about what she did, it's about how you now treat yourself in the same language. It's about how her disapproval still echoes in your mind, but now in your own voice. Jung spoke of this as the inner mother, an archetype that, when wounded, sits at the throne of your psyche and governs your worth, your choices, your relationships, and your sense of safety in the world. So what do most men do? They run, they perform, they distract themselves with work, with women, with noise. But wherever they go, the same question follows them. Why do I feel empty even when I do everything right? The answer is this: because you left yourself to go win a love that was never yours to earn in the first place. You stopped checking in with yourself. You abandoned your joy, your softness, your intuition. Because the model of love you inherited taught you that your needs were too much, your sadness was inconvenient, and your vulnerability was weakness. But here's what Jung would tell you, and it's a truth men must hear with trembling hands. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Who she needed you to be, not who you had to become to feel safe, but who you were before the adaptation. And to return to that man, you don't need more strength. You need compassion. Not pity, not indulgence, but something far more courageous. The willingness to sit with your pain without trying to fix it, justify it, or silence it. That is self-fathering. That is repairing. That is the act of becoming the internal guide you never had. And it's not a soft path. It's brutal. Because when you stop abandoning yourself, you must face the grief you've been avoiding your whole life. But in that grief lives your redemption. Because the moment you say, I see you, I will not leave you again, something shifts. You are no longer the echo of your childhood. You are no longer begging love to find you. You are no longer trying to earn the approval of a ghost. You are finally coming home, not to her but to you. You spent your life trying not to become your father. But silently, you became a prisoner to your mother, not by choice, but by inheritance. And the tragedy isn't that she failed you. It's that you kept her voice alive inside your mind long after she left the room. Carl Jung understood something most modern men ignore. The point of growth isn't rebellion, it's separation with love. The true journey of individuation is not about fighting against the past, but about stepping out of its grip. It's not about leaving the roots behind, but about growing beyond them. So, when you step into that silence, when you finally confront the deep, buried pain that once held you captive, it's there that you begin to reclaim yourself. You are no longer bound by the projections of a childhood you can't escape. You are no longer playing the role of the son seeking approval from a mother who couldn't give it. What you discover in that silence is a man who is finally free, not from her, but from the myth that held him prisoner. You stop seeking validation in places that can never give it to you. You stop giving away your power to stories that no longer serve you, and you begin to live on your own terms. So what does this mean for you? It means you have the chance to heal, to grow, and to finally become the man you were always meant to be. The path is not easy, but it is worth it. Because when you choose to leave the illusions behind, you step into the fullness of your own power. And here's the truth. The man who is whole doesn't seek validation. He doesn't perform to earn love. He simply is. He is free from the ghosts of the past. He is no longer trapped in the cycle of self-doubt and projection. The true journey of the man is one of integration. It's not about fixing what's broken. It's about understanding what was never truly yours to fix. It's about releasing the need to be saved, and instead, learning to save yourself. It's about knowing that your worth has always been intrinsic. It was never in her gaze. For completion outside of yourself. Stop seeking to prove your worth to a figure that no longer has the power to validate you. Instead, look inward. Look into the mirror of your own soul and recognize the man who has been there all along, waiting for you to claim him. That is where true freedom begins.